Thank you, thank you. I appreciate everybody coming out on the a day that threatens some bad weather, I'm sure just for our sparkling conversation and our rapier wits, and not at all because of the sandwiches. This panel was inspired by a story that I wrote for Garden and Gun magazine, which is a magazine that my mother in New York refuses to believe exists, in which I talked about moving here in about 2011. I've been here about 14 years, and there's all kinds of stories I tell myself about why I moved here, that New York had become too expensive, that I had found this community here, that I had this love for New Orleans culture, but in my heart, I know that I came for the sandwiches. And I came at a time, that meant, obviously, the po' boy. The po' boy is the great New Orleans sandwich. It's the sandwich, it's probably the sandwich that is most singularly associated with a city, and its city with it, in the world. Possible exception of Philadelphia. But it also meant a world of other sandwiches. There was obviously the muffaletta, there was the banh mi, but I also arrived around the time that there were all these other shops opening up that were bringing in sandwich traditions from all over the world, all over the country, and some of them just simply seemingly from outer space. What I came to believe is that we were in this golden age of sandwiches here. That a city that had long had a great sandwich had become a great sandwich town, great sandwich city. And I'm very happy to have 5 people who can speak to that, have contributed to that with me today. Beginning on my left is a member of New Orleans sandwich royalty. The Vaucressons have been in the New Orleans meat and sausage business since as far back as 1899. You know the hot sausage po' boy from Jazz Fest. Is it the only food item to have been in every single Jazz Fest?
We are the only original food vendor at Jazz Fest.
Okay, so that's a lot of Jazz Fest. And now back in a brick and mortar store. I'll let her tell you a little more about that journey, but happy to have them back serving sandwiches. I'm going to jump down to the end to Nini Nguyen, who is a chef and a teacher and an author who grew up also here in New Orleans East. Her family is part of the great influx of Vietnamese immigrants that came here in the 70s and has really changed our cuisine, or New Orleans cuisine. She's appeared on Top Chef All-Stars, The Last Bite Hotel, which she won, and she has a new cookbook called Dak Biet. Dan Stein needs no introduction.
Yeah.
Bona fide New Orleans icon. He opened Stein's Market and Deli in 2007, can still be found there most mornings, silently disapproving of your order. It's and has become an institution in its own right, as has St. James Creamery, opened by Richard Sutton with his wife in 2006, which is a great cheese store and a great sandwich spot. And finally, Tara Francolini, who opened Francolini's 2 years ago, identifying a hole in this market that I know I was desperate to have filled for Italian sandwiches. And she is living proof that, as her motto says, not everything from New Jersey sucks. So those are my folks. I want to start with you, Julie, since you are our sole po' boy representative. Tell us a little bit about Vaucresson's history and what you guys sell and how you think about the po' boy tradition.
Well, Vaucresson sausage started in 1899. My husband, who's sitting right over there, is a third-generation sausage maker. Wave to everybody, Vance. He's a third-generation sausage maker. He is continuing the family legacy, and we have children who are now working in the business. We just recently, it'll be 3 years in November, we've opened a restaurant, Vaucresson's Creole Cafe and Deli. And at the restaurant, we serve gumbo, we serve smothered okra, we serve all sorts of things. But the #1 bestseller that we have is the hot sausage po' boy. It's like hot sausage po' boy and then gumbo. It's nothing close. If you've been to French Quarter Fest or Jazz Fest, I'm sure you've had it. We're plenty of people's first stop. We're part of their tradition. And I think that's what's important for us. We want to deliver culturally significant food and just preserve some of the old New Orleans. And I think that's what it's about. When you think of Vaucresson sausage, you think of hot sausage po' boy.
And just to go back a little bit, you had, the store was on, is it on the site of the previous store that went back?
So where we're located right now was our processing facility.
Okay.
And it hadn't been open since Hurricane Katrina. At the time of the storm, we lost 17,000 pounds of meat. So we finally got back on that corner, and it's like home for us. So if you come to the restaurant, it's like we're welcoming you into our kitchen, our dining room at home.
And we pass it every day taking my children to school, and I can't eat it every single day. But
Sure you can.
and just so we know, there's the hot sausage, and you also do, I'm personally a fan of the chicken sausage.
We do Creole chicken sausage, jerk chicken sausage, the crawfish sausage, Italian sausage, and green onion sausage. Thanks.
Fabulous. And what do you have for us today?
We have hot sausage po' boys.
Hot sausage. Excellent. Terrific. And chicken. Nini, I want to pick up sort of vaguely chronologically, pick up from there. You grew up in the Vietnamese community in the East, and I think one of the things that has been one of the great stories of my time here in the last 20 years here has been, obviously there's been Vietnamese cuisine here for a long time, but I feel like the last 20 years have really shown how it's become, it used to be a little more on the periphery, and it's become a foundational part of what we consider the definition of New Orleans cuisine. Tell me what you grew up with in the sandwich tradition.
So, say the last question one more time.
Well, talk to me about growing up out there, and specifically
Yeah.
how that, what you saw of, we used to call them, or they used to be called Vietnamese po' boys. Now everybody knows what a banh mi is.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that transition.
So I grew up in New Orleans East, where I had dong phuong bread like pretty much every day. My grandma would always make me coffee, like sweetened condensed milk, warm coffee, and I'd dunk my dong phuong bread into it like a donut. And that's still like one of my favorite treats. But I want to talk about the banh mi sandwich. The bread is very similar to like po' boy bread, so I think that's why for New Orleanians, if they didn't know anything about Vietnamese food, they're like, that's a Vietnamese po' boy. And there's so much similarity from like the Vietnamese culture and New Orleans, because I believe it's because of the French connection. Had it not been for the French, we wouldn't have our bread, and we wouldn't have pâté, we wouldn't have aioli. We have our own pickles, but it's kind of the marriage of like all the textures, all the different flavors that make a wonderful sandwich. I was very lucky to eat dong phuong bread, and today you guys are lucky too, because I didn't make the sandwiches today. I got them from dong phuong. They're grilled pork ones. That one's my favorite. But it's very interesting in the last 20 years. I've been cooking for about 16, but when I was coming up, I would notice how much influence Vietnamese food was having into like the New Orleans restaurants. So the young chefs that weren't from Vietnamese backgrounds putting something like a banh mi inspired sandwich on their menu, or something pho inspired. And this marks 50 years of Vietnamese people being here in America. My family was the second family in New Orleans East. And it's kind of cool to see and feel so welcome in a city that most New Orleanians know what pho is. Like when you go to a pho shop here, it's not just Vietnamese people. There's like all kinds of people of all walks of life. And I think that it's a true testament to like what this city is and how our cuisine is evolving and how we have like pretty good palates.
And it's not just, dong phuong bread has become standard for New Orleans po' boys, non-Vietnamese po' boys now.
Yeah.
They deliver all over every day. Yeah.
Yeah. I like Adam Street Grocery, but it's like a grocery store. I guess it's not that far from here. It's like a bodega, corner store. Sorry, I lived in New York a little long. Oops. But they use dongfeng bread, and I always get like, that's like my favorite po' boy. Buy me from, or dongfeng bread po' boy.
Gotcha. Dan and Richard, you guys were both pioneers, opened within a couple of years of each other, or 1 year of each other, really.
Months.
Months of each other.
Months.
In fact, I think you were both
We opened up
aiming to
at
do
the end of 2006. I opened up at the beginning of 2007.
right, and you were both sort of early occupiers of the non-po' boy space, and reckoning with that. Tell me a little bit about what the landscape was like when you opened and how you wound up sandwich makers.
You want to do it? So, yeah, I guess I'll go first. Although technically Richard was in the market, beat me by a couple months. We both actually, I think, had similar ideas to open cheese stores. And I remember walking into his place while he was building out, and I was like, wow, this is nice. This is not going to go very well for me. And I kind of started to pivot right away into realizing that, hey, I'm going to have to do some other stuff. And, I just had some basic cheese at that time, some fancy stuff, but it wasn't moving at all because Richard had beat me in the market, and it really wasn't. And the market really wasn't that sophisticated at the time, and I think both of us started to realize that. Both of us started to realize that in order to move product and to keep cash flow coming in, we were going to have to make sandwiches and make sandwiches out of what we had to make it work. And yeah, so I coined, I guess, the term the sandwich monster, because it's, in both cases, like, we both didn't want to do what we were doing, but that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, well, say more, but the sandwich monster is the monster that makes you.
Yeah, everybody wanted sandwiches.
Everybody wants sandwich.
Yeah. I mean, I got kind of lucky. At some point, I had a lot of cheese, and the late Chris Rudge Bacchanal walked in one day, I think probably drunk, and said, he's like, I need cheese for Bacchanal, but I don't have any money. I said, well, I have plenty of cheese here. Just take it and pay me back later. And he just emptied me out, and then I was like, all right, we're making sandwiches.
Right.
All right, ready to go. And then, I left the cheese market to Richard, but we checked in on each other every once in a while, and Richard's like, what? And I could tell because he was telling me about what he was doing to change his kitchen to deal with.
To accommodate the monster.
Yeah, to accommodate the monster.
No, I mean, I remember that conversation really well, actually, and it was, so, Dan and I both, I think, arrived in New Orleans not necessarily with the specific intention of being involved in sandwiches. I wanted to come to New Orleans to sell cheese, and really it was like the kind of the culture of the city, the melting pot of just this incredible array of foods from around the world that is sort of somehow magically distilled into New Orleans food. And I'm like, well, that's going to be maybe a cool place to open up a cheese shop, because there wasn't really anybody doing it, at least too much at the time in the supermarket. So I opened up this cheese shop, and it was like a couple months in, realized like we got to find other ways to move this cheese. And that was, it was always sort of part of the plan to do something. But I remember having a conversation with Dan very specifically, and it was like, what are all these people doing here, staring at me, wanting me to make these sandwiches?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's really important to point out, the St. James thing was definitely, it wasn't, I say it was a we, it was Danielle and me kind of trying to figure out, my wife sitting in the audience over here. It was really us, like, how do we find as many ways we possibly can to use cheese? And sandwiches is a good spot. So, at least for us, when we were starting to make sandwiches, it was really about, we always kind of started with a cheese, So like probably our best known sandwich, this Hook's Cheddar, is named after the cheddar that is on the sandwich from this particular creamery. And that's kind of the way that we build all of our sandwiches there now. It's like we start with a cheese, and then we just kind of play around with it until we get somewhere, rather than kind of being like, well, we're going to make a this or a that. So. Can
you say what the rest of that sandwich is?
So the Hook's Cheddar was, the sandwich is not particularly complicated. It's Hook's Cheddar, smoked turkey, avocado, some a seasoned mayonnaise and tomatoes, and that's it, on a ciabatta. Oh, and basil,
Basil,
yeah.
basil.
All right, so there's like 5.
But clearly not a po' boy.
It's definitely not a po' boy. I mean, it's like, it was like, well, what's going to go good with these things? I mean, people have had turkey cheddar sandwiches for centuries probably, But it was like, it was always for us, like, let's start with this cheddar and what are we going to do with it,
Did either of you consider the idea of opening a po' boy shop? How did you think about po' boys?
No.
Yeah,
No.
definitely not.
No.
I mean, the po' boy, like, even after Katrina, when, when Danielle and I first got here, I mean, half the city still didn't have power, and, even at that time, it was just like, the po' boy is the New Orleans sandwich, and who are we to say
Right.
that we know how to make a po' boy, It's just not our.
Did you have people coming in demanding po' boys?
Asking for maybe, not demanding.
What up?
But you also have to understand that when you open up like janky little markets like we do, you don't have the machinery set up to do po' boys. You need fryers, you need hoods, you need grease traps. So if you don't do that, then you're kind of limited in what you can do until you kind of build it out later on, and you're still restricted. Like, we have a hood now, but for the first couple of years, we did not have a hood. We had a little 1-foot grill that did everything, and the place was just covered in grease all the time. If you went on top of like the walk-in to grab something, you had to hold on so you didn't slip off. It was definitely illegal and wrong. I think my landlord was like, "This has got to stop." And then we got a ventless hood, which would into filters, which became really expensive and not very effective. So ultimately, the district got a hood, and I was like, "Wow, that's kind of cool." And we got one afterwards, and yeah. But still, I don't have a fryer. I don't have room for a fryer. I mean, you're looking at po' boys, you got to have different setups in your kitchen, and it's hard to come back and reset up that way with what you have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, our kitchen was not a kitchen, and then it became
Yeah.
a kitchen. When we first applied for our alcohol license as a restaurant, when we wanted to sell beer, this is a couple years after we opened, the state inspector came by and said, "Well, we're not going to approve your request because you're not a restaurant, you don't have a kitchen." And I'm like, "No, I definitely have a kitchen."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, do you have a hood?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Do you have a stove?" I'm like, "No." We have toasters and panini press, and he's like, "That's not a kitchen." So I'm like, "Well, listen, I mean, I got these articles here from the paper, people saying we're making these sandwiches here," and finally the guy's like, "All right, we'll let it slide, but we're going to be watching you."
Tara, so you are you set up most recently. Tell me a little bit about what you set out to do and how you've found the sandwich landscape here.
Yeah, I wanted to open a sandwich shop. That was kind of a
You
goal.
are the sandwich monster.
No, I'm not. the sandwich monster. I got 20 years to work on that. I was at a point in COVID. After COVID, it was either leave the industry or try to open a sandwich shop that kind of focused on my upbringing and just what I was used to in New Jersey and New York and things that I grew up on that I thought might have a market down here. And decided to go for it, namely because I miss chicken cutlets. Chicken cutlets are like a real big thing back home, and I was flying back to get them, and that became expensive. And I just decided I needed to make some chicken cutlet sandwiches, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do, and they are delicious. What is your bestseller?
So the Italian is hands down the bestseller. It's just our take on a traditional, it's very polarizing back home. Like, everyone has their own idea of what's on an Italian. Is there pepperoni? Is there no pepperoni? Is there prosciutto? It's like a whole war. And we set on ours, which has 4 different meats. It has red onions. It has pepperoncinis. It has no mayonnaise, which is a big deal. That's an issue, I guess. But there's lettuce and house bin, and there's no tomatoes unless they're in season, because I hate mealy tomatoes, and that's a thing too. But there's that, and then the Dima, and that is a cutlet sandwich as well. And they kind of go hand in hand with the two best sellers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear, cutlets are not,
Cutlets, so it's
Grilled
a breast, and you slice them, then you pound them, and then you bread them. And I guess some places deep fry them, but we pan fry all of ours. It's kind of just like how I grew up with them. So, yeah.
well, I want to talk a little bit of sandwich theory here. I'm going to start with you because followers of Tara's Instagram may have noticed that this week she debuted a sandwich called the Lindor, which is the product of a bet that both Tara and I are baseball fans. I'm a Mets fan. She's a Braves fan.
I lost the bet.
My daughter's favorite baseball player is Francisco Lindor. We bet over whether the Braves or Mets would win more games against each other last year. They tied, and Tara, being the mensch that she is, still decided to create a Lindor, which was a very delicious sandwich. So it's a good opportunity for me to ask you, when you make specials regularly, how do you approach that? What makes a good sandwich?
Yeah, I mean, I think the specials, it's, well, just the sandwich in general, like, I love sandwiches so much because I think that they're curated almost so that you can have the perfect bite. Like, you don't have to have, it's not a plate that has numerous things on it, and they do work together, but you don't really get everything together. Like, I love that a sandwich, if everything is on there perfectly, like edge to edge, stacked properly, you can have one bite and it's just like an explosion of flavor. It needs that acid, it needs that fat, it needs that salt. And when you put everything together, it's awesome, even though it's like in your hand, and it's not fancy, it's great. So that's kind of what we think about when we're building things. You know, for something like that, the Lindor, I mean, I like having inspiration. That, you know, Brett's daughter said she wanted something that was inspired by the Puerto Rican heritage, and obviously that's not usually our, you know, foray or our expertise, so we did some research, and then we started learning all about the tripleta sandwich in Puerto Rico and what it is, and kind of drawing inspiration on that. So that's.
So just describe it. It was three kinds of meat.
It's 3 different types of meat. It was we did like a roasted pork with tomato and garlic to make it a little Italian, and then there was like beef and usually there's ham. We did prosciutto cazzo, and then we created a slaw that was kind of just a whole bunch of things, and you know, melted cheese, and then we added some pepperoncinis, and we added some hot cherry peppers, things that are more traditionally Italian, but still had the base of the Puerto Rican influence.
It was delicious. I want to ask other people to chime in on that. Do you do specials as well? And what do you think if you're going to do a new sandwich or a new po' boy? Is there anything you?
Well, we don't do new things very often,
Okay.
but I did come up with something. We started jerk chicken sausage,
Okay.
and we do it with house-made pickled onions, and I have a line of mustards, and so we do a mango mustard sauce with it, and we debuted that at the 2019 Jazz Festival, and it took off. We used to sell hot sausage, then it was crawfish sausage, and then everything else. Now it's hot, jerk, and then everything else.
Okay.
So it's a big one.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything that has to be on a sandwich, you guys? What do you when you're making a new one? Is there anybody want to throw in?
Does anything have to be on a sandwich?
Well, is there anything that sort of when you're inventing a sandwich or when you're starting one? What are you thinking about?
I don't remember. I mean, I think the last sandwich we invented was like the mumbler. It's probably 8 years old.
Is that right?
Yeah. I think, and I remember the thought process going into it because we had bought a bunch of Taleggio for Bacchanal, and they rejected it because it came in too ripe. So I was like, oh boy, what are we going to do with this? So we decided to make a sandwich out of it. I remember I used to make a Taleggio and prosciutto sandwich when I was at Martin Wine Cellar. And so me and Andre were there one night, and we just started kind of screwing around. And back at the time, Dominica had a prosciutto and arugula pizza. So I went and grabbed some arugula, and we threw it on there. And then Andre, of course, is like, there's no sweetness. There needs to be sweetness. And that's actually one of the big things is having a little bit of sweetness with all the salt. And I guess we took the easy road out. We throw the aged balsamic on, and boom, there's your sweetness. But sometimes you can get your sweetness through Onions has sweetness in it. Roasted red peppers has sweetness in it. On the Italian hoagie, I'm sure Tara would also agree that the aged provolone actually has a latent sweetness to it. We put a garlic vin on ours, which has roasted garlic, which is some sweetness in it. So it's having a little sweet and salty. Ultimately, you know, I guess the other latest sandwich, Foxy, probably also 8 or 10 years old, has onions on it. Again, little bit of sweetness on there that kind of catches people. Russian dressing's got, everything's got a little bit of sweetness to balance out with the salt.
That's really interesting. I would have guessed that, I mean, it's easier to identify the pickled part or the sort of acid more than the sweet, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything else that you think is, makes a sandwich good, even when you're at home making one?
I don't have home, I just...
I can't remember the last time I made a sandwich for myself.
Is that right? Sad. What about, we live in this weird time. I know that when I talk to my friends who run restaurants, who are in the food business, they all say that they're barely making it, or that it's become increasingly difficult to, margins are down. There's a limit to how much they can charge. Everything's more expensive, and they're barely, it's become a harder and harder business. And then I talk to my friends who eat out, and they think, well, everything's gotten crazy expensive, I can barely afford it. So we're at this weird moment where nobody's happy. And I expect that some of you may be going through some of those things. I'm curious what the economics are for owning a place in New Orleans these days, and how particularly if you use eggs, for instance, what that's been like. What are the kinds of considerations you've had to face?
I'll step up because Dan Stein saved me in a moment of panic when was this? Last February?
Probably.
Yeah, we had an awful February. Like, I thought we were going to close, and I called him, and I was like, Dan, I need your help. And he thought it was like, I ran out of roast red peppers, and I was like, I think we have to shut the restaurant. He was like, hold on. And he was like at the register with someone. He's like, hold on, I'm on the phone. And I could hear him saying that, and he's on the phone. He's like, let's go eat. Like, let's go figure this out. And we talked everything through, and from that conversation, we wound up on Uber Eats, which is something that, like, it wasn't really a thing, like, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, and it's something that we had to do in order to stay afloat, and I'm glad I did it now. Uber Eats is like 50% of our sales, which is wild.
Wow.
But that, like, to me, is the biggest economic thing that we had to kind of do that we never thought we were going to have to set out to do, and that is what saved our business, is Uber Eats, and I hate that I have to say that out loud. I think that's a real statement.
That's
but
interesting.
It really is. And Dan, calm me down off an edge was bad.
What?
Yeah, you talked me off that edge that day.
Yeah, I mean, the apps, this is actually something that I wanted to bring up, because the market has gotten so tight. I mean, we're probably doing volume revenue more than we've ever done, but I'm not seeing any profits right now, which means probably have to raise my prices again. I mean, as much as I have an accounting degree and a law degree, I've never really been a fan of, like, real numbers, although I love to surround myself with numbers people to try to tell me, if what I'm feeling is right. But what I see right now with costs going up, with the reliance on the apps, and the apps take anywhere from 15 to 30%. We're also in a very strange time right now, and I can see it because I see restaurants closing now around us that have been around for a while. And I know, I have a very good feeling of what's going on, and that's this. Because of where we're located, and because of the climate issues, and because of insurance, it has caused this almost like cancerous effect where you don't know why things are harder and you're sick, but you just feel off and you feel wrong. And if you really start to think about it, you start looking and you're seeing how your rent has gone up and your insurance has gone up and the amount you pay your employees has to go up because their rent has gone up and their expenses have gone up. And also you begin to see that your customers don't necessarily have as much money to spend because of their disposable income has gone down because they're feeling the same effects as you. And you begin to really realize that the margins are shrinking, and that's why I look around and when I see places like Trilly closing, when I see places like Fry's Meat closing, when I see places like Gracious Bakery talking about, I begin to wonder without talking to them if they are feeling the same thing that I'm feeling. And it's also ironic, having Richard here, it's great because back in the day, in order to make it work, we had to sell sandwiches. But I would probably, and I think Richard would agree with me, the fact that we have well-diversified businesses now that don't just rely on sandwiches provides us an advantage so that we can actually stay competitive in our pricing and still do what we need to do to stick around. So as much as the sandwich monster created us, it's now the other stuff that we wanted to do that keeps us in business and keeps us afloat.
No, Dan, that's absolutely right. I mean, we're blessed to have, built up some good business just wholesaling cheese,
And people don't know I wholesale some stuff. I sell a lot of groceries on the side, and I hustle a lot. I do a lot of other stuff. There's other reasons I'm there besides the sandwiches all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We don't ever want to see the sandwiches go away, but at the same time, you're right. I mean, it's like we kind of come back and now we can focus on the things that I think probably we enjoy even more about the business. But, the only thing I would add too is that I think just the restaurant industry in general and the way people eat in this country is really kind of out of whack these days. I think it's been skewed by, I hate to place the blame on the Walmarts of the world, but I think people's understanding of food costs and how they eat and what's available to eat and the quality of food we eat is all just completely manipulated and out of whack. And I think, when people, when you look at what it costs to build a sandwich at Dan's or Tara's or Vaucresson, I mean, all these components are really expensive, and yet people just says, well, I can't be that expensive. I can buy ham for $1.50 a pound from Walmart. Why am I paying $12 for the sandwich? And I think, and that's just sort of a bigger conversation. And I think for us being in a city like New Orleans that has such a diverse and food culture, and it's so ingrained in the city, I do believe that people are accepting of that. I don't know if people would be able to do the kinds of things that we do in other communities outside of New Orleans. I just don't know. It's just tricky. I think people's expectations are become very, very out of whack.
Yep.
The restaurant game is not for the weak. Yeah. And I can tell you it's extremely hard. I don't know if it's harder the day-to-day or working with my husband. They're both equally challenging. But we're not a gimmicky restaurant. Like, I know everybody's seen all the gimmicks on Instagram, all these outlandish things. That's what we're competing with, and so it can be hard. It can be very challenging.
It does seem like there's some restaurants, do it for the melt, the pull. Is that what they call it? The pull? The stretch, whatever it's called. I imagine it being sort of a double bind because I can see sandwiches being a comfort food, a food that when times are bad, it's cheaper than going out to a fancy restaurant. But I also imagine you run up against a ceiling of what you can charge no matter what's on there. That people sort of put it in a box thinking, well, a sandwich can't cost $19. A sandwich can't cost, I don't know is there a number that you guys have run up? Do you know where that is?
An upper limit?
Yeah, the upper limit.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I want to coin a rule here
that I run
today.
up against. I'm at the register a lot. There's just sometimes when I see something, I'm like, I cringe, and I'm like,
same.
Yeah.
but maybe that's because I've been there for for, 17 years. So I'm like, oh man, I remember when I charged,
Right.
Reuben soda, $13.99, and now it's like over 20 or around $20, and it's like, ouch,
Yeah, I thought that I wanted all of the sandwiches to be under $15. I had this pipe dream, and that just was not possible. Like, with tax and everything, it's not possible, and it sucks.
Right.
Like, I wish it wasn't as expensive as it was, but it's not what it can be.
Right.
And the apps have also, the ability or the availability of the apps, so many people use them now. And it's, we talk about the sandwich monster. And the sandwich monster today is just different than the sandwich monster back in the day. Like, I could live with that sandwich monster. It was a pain in the ass, but I enjoyed it to some extent. Looking down at a tablet and plugging in things, not seeing the customer come in, just a guy with a phone. It's also thrown off a lot with the way we used to, people would come in, tip and stuff like that. Tips get shared amongst your employees. The drivers get tipped. So you have to begin to you have to give raises, give bonuses, or whatever you need to give to your employees, because they're large parts of their wages are not being made available. Like, the tip was like part of the ecosystem that provided that, and it's changed things a lot. If I knew this was what it was going to be, I don't know if I would have done it. But I'm here, and
Well, we're glad you did. I didn't mean to go down this road.
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
It's something that needs to be said.
Sandwiches are so sad. Let's. I will say that one of the bright spots, just to bring Nini back in for a second, who maybe luckily does not own a restaurant. Are you looking at a space? Are you thinking about opening a restaurant?
I am looking for a space. I don't know if I would make sandwiches.
Okay.
No offense to y'all.
None taken.
Now I'm just like,
But there is, for instance,
but it's scary.
Yeah, the Banh Mi Boys, just to name one example, which is really, this, fusion has become this sort of laughable, or after a while became this cliche. But if you want to point at fusion that is, sort of joyful and wonderful and delicious, they are doing some incredible things with that are absolutely combinations of New Orleans traditions and.
I think what they're doing is a lot of fun
Yeah.
and creative, and it's nice to see young people doing fun stuff with food and making weird new things. They're probably also like the Instagram pull kind of guys, but I do like their sandwiches, and they are on the apps. But yeah, I think it's really cool that there's a lot of different ways to make like a bite me sandwich. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's so many varieties, and I think, but yeah, I like every sandwich. I think it's hard to make like a perfect sandwich, in my opinion, because like on a plate you can make everything. Everyone can kind of make their own bite, but when you're putting in between two slices of bread or whatever just bread in general, because I thought you were going to definitely ask us if a hot dog is a sandwich. But you're kind of dictating every bite that they get. And so I think as a chef, I think it's more difficult than you think it is. So when you make one that works, it's magic.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you as an eater, I have many opinions on what makes a good sandwich, and one of them is structural integrity. And I think that oftentimes, in a bad, people think they're providing value by putting extra stuff on there, when in fact balance is crucial.
Yeah.
All right, it's time for the lightning round. I'm going to ask you guys a series of sandwich questions. Starting down with you, okay? So, hot muffaletta or cold muffaletta?
Cold.
So, cold.
Have you seen lightning?
But we have an old one that didn't get picked up or something. I'll have them throw it on the panini press to crisp up the bread. So, Yeah, but yeah, cold most.
Cold.
Yeah.
I'm a hot muff guy. Yeah.
Cold.
Cold.
All right, correct answer is cold. Your favorite po' boy? I mean, of the five, or of the classic po' boys, what's your favorite?
I'm a classic shrimp.
Shrimp.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you from where after, so go ahead.
Shrimp.
Peacemaker.
Shrimp.
Hot sausage.
And just for those who might be from out of town, tell the folks what a peacemaker is.
Half and half oyster shrimp.
That's good. And from where?
Adams Street
have-
Grocery is like more my neighborhood spot, but really anywhere, as long as the shrimp is fresh.
I go to Don Malisi's every Monday with my dog, so I can walk her a couple blocks away.
Aw.
I mean, I'd second that one. I haven't been there in years, but it's a great one.
I really liked Bevy's Shrimp. I think they closed the one recently, but
Yeah.
A great little place in the 7th Ward, Vaucresson's Creole Cafe and Deli.
That's good. That's good. But you guys are a link, not a patty, right?
We are linked.
Always linked.
Well, we do patties,
You do,
but
okay.
yeah.
Got you. Dressed or undressed?
Dress.
Dressed.
Dressed.
dress no tomato.
Dressed with Creole mustard.
With Creole mustard. Now, because you said double E's, I have to ask this. Ketchup on your fried seafood po' boy or no?
Yeah, they put ketchup or,
You like it?
yeah, I'll do it. I think ketchup and a little hot sauce they throw on there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not
Yeah.
I
Good.
have to
same.
special order that.
Huh?
I have to special order the no ketchup thing. It was morally distressing to
You
me.
couldn't handle it? No.
Oh,
Ketchup?
no ketchup, no.
No ketchup.
Yes.
Yes, I accept the ketchup as well. Sorry. What do we got here? Russian dressing or mustard on your, oh, sorry, pastrami or corned beef?
Me?
Any of you, all of you.
Pastrami.
Corned beef.
Yeah, corned beef.
Pastrami.
Pastrami.
Okay, and mustard or Russian dressing?
Russian dressing.
Russian dressing.
Oh,
Mustard.
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 right. Pepperoni on your Italian?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
Too overwhelming.
Okay. And, this is what about coleslaw on a sandwich, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Depends on the sandwich.
All right.
Yay.
You guys have great taste. I really appreciate it. These are very much my thing. All right, we've got 3 minutes, or 2 minutes and 35 seconds specifically, and then we're going to let you guys eat some sandwiches. So if anybody has, we have probably time for 2 or 3 questions if anybody has them. Go ahead.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, yeah, the apps, the apps blew up. I mean, people don't, I mean, so even though we pride ourselves on being a locals place, we get a lot of tourists because we're in New Orleans, and there are so many people that don't know how to use a phone to call in anymore or something like that. They expect to be able to go on to something and order like that. Yeah. I mean, I can't even, I mean, I haven't really, there's just so many changes that we've had to deal with since COVID that, I would probably have to sit down and really plot it out on one of my guest checks, 30 or 40 things.
Would that be yes across the board for you all?
No.
Another question, go ahead.
For Dan, and I say this with a smile,
Okay.
I think I've asked you this before. Can someone walk in and ask for a simple pastrami on rye with mustard and not be asked what kind of bread, what kind of toast, etc.?
I mean, no, because there's different types of rye bread, seeded, unseeded, or marble. And because so many people want so many different things, we want to make sure that they get what they want. Because if I just assume that everybody wants the same thing, part of our competitive advantage in the market is the fact that we give all these choices. So I'm sorry we ask you so many questions.
Oh, sorry. Beer first.
Besides poor boys and your own sandwiches, what is each sandwich place you love to go to treat yourself when you want to go?
We got 10 seconds, folks.
Place.
What was the question?
A non-po' boy sandwich shops that you go to other than your own?
What do they have? What do you mean? What's
Any place you go for a sandwich?
Zimmers.
Zimmers, okay, good.
If tomatoes are in season, I'll have the turkey and the wolf tomato sandwich, but then I just also make it at home.
yeah, that's a
Good
really
call. Okay, great.
That's a good sandwich.
A good way to end. Forgive me for not getting to anybody else's questions, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody. If I could hold up really quickly before you get to the samples, I actually would love if each of you could talk briefly, just the type of sample that you brought. Then the other thing I'll say is book signings are now inside across the way in the LBC. But if you want to.
I have a grilled pork, like lemongrass banh mi sandwich from Dong Phuong.
I brought corned beef specials, corned beef Swiss law Russian. We put them on hoagie rolls because easier to cut into fours and make more pieces. Otherwise, rye bread, obviously, but.
We brought two. We brought a sandwich that's made from a cheddar made in Louisiana called Dolly, served with some Benton's country ham from Tennessee, and pickles and a nice pepper jelly from Once Around the Kitchen from Dre Glass in New Orleans. And then we have a vegetarian sandwich, if there are any vegetarians here, which is real simple. Another Louisiana cheese made from Southern Maid's Dairy feta, goat's milk feta on the North Shore in Franklinton. It's wonderful feta. And we just have that with some grilled artichoke hearts on baguette.
We've got our Italian. We've got one tray with hots and one without hots.
Hot sausage po' boys and chicken sausage po' boys.
All right, so as you guys heard, that's a lot of options, so choose wisely because we want to make sure we have sandwiches for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.